other hands will play a role in taking us to our destinies. And just accepting their help doesn't diminish the part that you play in your own creation. What's up, family? Welcome back to the Stop Sinking Show, where we go from struggle to flow. Can we have an honest conversation about your willingness and your ability to ask for help? I don't need your help, man. I got this. Does that sound like you? Does your pride get involved when you think about asking for help? Do you feel the need to figure things out yourself? Have you had poor experiences in the past when help was asked, needed, and wasn't available? And so to not feel vulnerable and find yourself in that helpless state again where you need to ask for something, it just became your default to rely on yourself, and it became more and more difficult to ask for help. Or maybe the wrong type of help was given and didn't turn out how you imagined. It's not just that the help we receive benefits us, but just the willingness to ask for help already has huge benefits for your character. It says that you are willing to put yourself below the importance of the best possible outcome. And if that means recruiting help to get the best possible outcome, to make the pie bigger and play a smaller part in the overall success, then you're willing to put your ego aside in the process of reaching for and building towards big missions and orchestrations that require more hands on board. And since we are symbiotic beings, we are here to depend on each other and be in relation to each other in complementary fashions. You need the rhythm of the bass to help the rhythm of the guitar that the lead enhances and the singer makes memorable. I said all that to lay the groundwork because I recognize the personal difficulty in our learned experiences while growing up for some of us that might cause us to not be as comfortable asking for help that might not even be an issue for someone else. I personally struggle with asking for help and almost judge people who freely ask for help from others. I recognize this is probably rooted in my own personal childhood traumas, perceived or otherwise, real or imaginary, and having to be hyper independent, that now I fear asking for help because it means having to depend on someone and to give them some power over me. For someone like me to ask someone for help is a huge deal. And not only because it makes me feel exposed, but because so little help was available to me in the places I would have wanted as a kid, that I now look at help as one of the most precious things to give and receive. And so when I ask someone for help, it is almost holy ground for me. And I feel a deep sense of honor when someone helps me with something. Match that with extending myself to just ask, and it is the utmost form of intimacy for me, helping and asking for help. And I don't let just anyone help me. And if I do, I hold them in such a high regard that I would allow myself to be dependent on them and allow them to be now spiritually bound to me forever in the debt that I will forever feel towards them. I guess you can call it my love language, because maybe the story I've held on to is that I had so very little of it that when someone offers me help, they are offering me love. The fact that they would take their time and effort out to do something for me is no higher of an honor that I can think of. Now, while I hold help in such a high regard, traumatic response or not, the way I try to equalize the negative balance in the universe for myself is by being as helpful as possible. Though I find it difficult to ask for help, I'm very quick and deeply sincere in offering help. I want no one to ever feel deprived of help like I have, or like I think I have, because I could just as easily and justifiably take my negative and multiply it all the way down to hell by saying, no one helps me, so why should I help anyone else? But just imagine what a world that would be. If everyone in your life, your home, your workplace, your city, if everyone just said, I will only think about myself and only fend for myself and not help lift a burden for anyone else. And not only would productivity drop because of duplicate efforts, and not only would progress slow because of misdirected and misaligned inclinations and talents of people and what they're meant to be doing, but worse, we would literally trample over each other to get what's ours. And I doubt we would have made it this far in society without thinking about the offerings of and offering to a tribe. We survived because of an exchange of value. I sacrifice a bit for you, and you sacrifice a bit for me, and we call each other a family. Still, there are types of help you should be wary of, and at least do your diligence on before accepting. And it wouldn't hurt to ask yourself the same questions when you are offering help. Does this help come with expectation? Am I doing this in exchange for something? Even gratitude, appreciation, higher regard, or mercy is a form of currency in exchange for your help. And I'm not saying a person shouldn't appreciate or be thankful, but the help cannot be given as a transaction for it. Whether you offer it or accept it, it would be good to know and to think about where the help is coming from. Another question to ask yourself and to ask about the help that's being received is, does this help come wholeheartedly? Does the person or you actually want to help? Or is there any doubts of obligation or having to extend oneself beyond the heart's limits? One of my favorite understandings of myself is the limits of my heart and how much it allows me to do. So if someone asks me to do something that feels like a little too much to give, I say no, because the momentary disappointment from the other person is worth less to me than having to stretch myself to give something that leaves me feeling robbed, that I didn't give fully, that I didn't really want to do. And this is a huge one for me, because one of the most regrettable feelings for me when it is already hard for me to ask for help is to ask it of someone who I consider close and they agree, and I later find out that they didn't really want to do it, but did it anyway because they didn't know how to say no. Since asking is such holy ground for me, there's nothing that scares me away from asking for help more than to ask it of the wrong person who will do it, but then hold it against me, or keep a tally of it, or have any regret or remorse for their time and effort spent doing it. I would much rather someone say no, because now I feel double, triple bad and trapped, because I already pushed myself to ask, and they did it, and they already have done it, but didn't really do it with their full heart, and possibly now have expectations of me, and maybe they have regrets that they did it, and now I fully regret even having asked. And since I consider asking for help so sacred, I also think offering help is sacred and can never be done this loosely. Because ultimately, what you're asking is this help dependable? Nothing is more fickle than someone doing something on the whim of emotion, or because they were in a good mood or optimistically signed up for something, but aren't actually committed to it. And then nothing is more triggering to me than to put myself outside my safety zone to depend on someone and then have them fail to come through, or even simply fail to communicate out of their non-confrontational inability to say no in the first place. Because my early life has taught me to depend on myself and myself only, that when I put myself out there to depend on someone else and they fail me, I have to really work on my traumatic response to not get thrown right back into learning that I am right in only depending on myself. Because logically, I recognize the need for interdependence. Because even though I say all this from protection of my ego, I can also acknowledge that it doesn't have to be about my ego at all. And it isn't. In the most practical of senses, we wouldn't be where we are if it wasn't for all the advantages and help along the way. None of us are self-made. It's all little advantages and nudges and words of encouragement along the way that adds up to someone being an outlier. Other hands will play a role in taking us to our destinies. And just accepting their help doesn't diminish the part that you play in your own creation. We are definitely more enhanced with the help of each other, though. Something as simple as having someone spot you in the gym can add like 10% to your strength. just because your mind no longer has to worry about safety and can push to failure and risk more. We were able to build civilizations because we worked in cooperation and in concert with each other and trusted while I worked to build this thing here, man. You go do this and protect us standing over there, and you go over there and make sure we are all fed, and so on. It was cooperation that trumps the ego. It's cooperation that led to the safety that allows us to extend past our boundaries. And that's more important than the boundaries of your ego. Now, while I recognize cooperation is necessary, and I try not to load any of my asks with expectation, I do also see a whole nother group of people who are bold and brazen in their asks. And a part of me judges people who ask for things indiscriminately and often. Words like taker come to my mind. And I don't know how to reconcile that with not having expectations, or if I do something for the person, not wanting some appreciation, especially if they ask without hesitation over and over again for different things. Maybe a part of me does want to be appreciated for it if they're not even recognizing it. And here I realize the missing key for my own struggle with asking. It's to not be what I judge, a taker. It's my own harsh judgment of it. But in it, I realized a key distinction between a giver and a taker. And that's intention. It's not that I want appreciation. It's that I want the person asking for the thing to recognize the ask in itself, what the ask means, not to dismiss the magnitude of honor it is to have someone do something that you ask, because no one owes you time and effort of theirs. It is in the recognition of the holy ground that asking for help is that separates a real giver and a taker. And so if your heart is pure and your recognition is true, don't let anything hold you back from asking for help. I love you, family. Stay true always. I see you on the next show.